And second, I do this, and I'm noticing other people do it. It's also related to milestones. I love how important it is to us, and I love looking at the stones and choosing a specific stone to drop. I see people do it all the time, and I do it myself. So just, I don't know if everyone else has noticed that. I'm not like this wise old woman or anything, but I've noticed it, and I think it's great. I will do a brief bio, because there are new folks today who don't know me. Others do, and probably get tired of hearing the same bio every time somebody they know comes up to speak. But I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and I've been a member here for almost 30 years. And I've worked in a number of areas of social work as a clinician, in psychiatric hospitals, in physical rehab hospitals. I'm currently a manager at an insurance company, but it's all case management with indigent population. It's wonderful what we can do for our folks. But probably the work that maybe has the most impact on today's topic is the many years I've spent doing domestic violence and sexual violence work. And then following that up with the opportunity, at the time I wasn't sure it was a great opportunity, but it really was, to work a little bit more with men, and sometimes men who were perpetrators of violence, in my role as an employee assistance professional at the United States Postal Service. So we'll get started. The topic today, I was asked to speak on anger, and Dodie handed me a folder from a previous presentation we had here on anger. And at that time, I remember this, the program committee was doing a series on the 7 deadly sins. Well, I kind of turned that on its head a little bit, so if you think of it as a sin, you might not by the time we're done today. I have a confession to make. I got angry yesterday. So coming here to talk to you about anger may seem disingenuous or cynical, but nothing could be further from the truth. And the reality is that we all get angry at times. Anger is a universal human emotion. And I want to be very clear. As a Unitarian Universalist, I do not consider it a sin. The real question is, does it help us or does it hurt us? Are there levels of anger and rage, and is there value to it? The answer to both questions can be yes, depending on the situation at hand. Now, my anger yesterday was very brief. When someone did something in traffic that I didn't like. And to be very honest, that happens to me more often than I would like to admit. But after a few seconds, I was able to remind myself that perhaps that person was unfamiliar with the area, and that's why they turned in front of me at the last minute. Or there could be several other benign reasons for their behavior. It doesn't necessarily mean they're selfish, they don't care that I'm there, things like that are not really, probably not the reason for their behavior. It was virtually 100% likely that it had absolutely nothing to do with me. The word anger derives from an Old Norse word, not sure how to say it, anger, but it's spelled A-N-G-R, so it might be anger, it might be anger, I don't know, but regardless, that's where it comes from. It's said to mean trouble, affliction, and pain. So taking this definition, anger comes out of pain, but it does not mean or have to mean that we perpetuate that pain and inflict more pain. This is where it becomes critical, in my view, to understand that the emotion is valid, but the response, rather than a knee-jerk reaction, is crucial. More than once, I had a friend say to me that I needed to let go of my anger. And if that had been in relation to resentments or grievances I was holding on to from personal situations, that would have made a world of sense. Because being driven by fear and hate-based anger towards others is not a productive activity. I'm reminded, as we all have been over the weekend, I'm sure, of the January 6th insurrectionists, who may have believed their cause was righteous, but the harm they caused to other humans in particular says otherwise. There's a song lyric, and this is going to show you all the vast diversity of my listening pleasure, from a hardcore group called Drowning Pool. They have a song called Bodies that speaks to this type of anger with the lyric, driven by hate, consumed by fear. But unfortunately for me and my friend, the anger I was expressing, which I do believe was a truly righteous rage, was related to social injustices, such as children in cages at the border, and the deaths of young black men at the hands of police officers or other citizens due to their race. When I would express my righteous rage and share that those young men could have been my son, for our guest, our son is biracial, they told me, well, that was not my son, so let go of it. It really astounded me that anyone would say something that sounded so callous to my ears. Clearly, though, not everyone is comfortable having or expressing strong emotions. But emotions, including anger and rage, are not bad. We have a choice as to what we do with them, and there are horrifying situations in the world that absolutely deserve the focus of our rage. Religious traditions have what might seem contradictory positions regarding anger, but context is everything. In many Buddhist traditions, anger is seen as a poison, something to be avoided. However, the Dalai Lama looks at anger as a productive force that provides energy which can lead to social change. He speaks of the Mahayana Buddhist practice, which is an altruistic practice, and embraces compassionate anger. He says that Buddhists cannot remain indifferent to societal issues and injustices, but must become involved through compassionate anger. If spiritual practice is only at the level of ritual and thought, it can never help us solve community problems and create social justice. Anger can be channeled and used as energy. It brings more energy, more determination, and more forceful action to correct injustice. Christian scripture also includes what might be seen as contradictory messages if you are not considering context. While we should not let the sun go down on our anger in our personal relationships and the microcosm of our individual lives, we can certainly see examples of righteous anger in the Bible, when, for instance, Jesus confronts the men engaged in commerce in a holy temple. We probably all know that story. Many of the activist activities that I have been involved in got my attention due to my own feelings of outrage over injustices committed. Escorting women into family planning clinics is a good example. And I can tell you, even though we were fueled by our outrage and sense of injustice when we participated in that activity, we were not the ones inflicting bodily harm while doing that. I watched my husband thrown to the ground by a protester. Those were the people who were not exercising their anger appropriately. Also, participating in the Women's March, attending Black Lives Matter events, and even getting in animal rescue activities started with that little kernel of anger or sense of injustice that lit the spark of interest in getting involved and doing something about it. Now, going back to that anger at someone you feel wronged by, and I'm really talking here about a small potatoes kind of thing, like getting cut off in traffic. It is not managed productively by flying into a rage and screaming at the other driver, or actually even griping to yourself as you're driving down the street. Lost my spot, sorry. In general, person-directed anger is non-productive. It takes a lot of energy and it leaves you feeling pretty drained. But this doesn't mean you shouldn't be angry or be able to express your feelings. In fact, a productive way to handle personal relationship-derived anger is to speak to the other person and clear the air or let them know you were hurt by their words. This does not apply in situations where safety is a concern. As I said, I've worked with domestic violence for a lot of years, and also some perpetrators. It's not helpful or safe to encourage victims to try and talk to a perpetrator, even though in the courts, at least I don't know for sure in Harris County, but in Montgomery County, when I was working there, they mandate mediation in divorce proceedings. And that does not matter whether you have a restraining order, have been beaten up or not. So just to know, that might be something if you're interested in being an advocate, checking out. Certainly, anger at public figures, such as Donald Trump or Elon Musk, isn't very productive. Wouldn't it be much more productive to take that and channel it into getting involved in social activism, to solve real-world problems, to use our compassionate anger and invest in solutions and change-making? One barrier to doing that seems to be viewing the situation as too big to affect change, leaving one feeling hopeless and venting anger in a directionless fashion. Social problems can seem overwhelming and unresolvable, but as Martin Luther King Jr. said, we shall overcome because the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. Now I want to shift gears just a little bit and talk about suppression of emotions, but particularly suppression of anger. It's certainly appropriate in certain situations. You may be angry with a family member, but at the same time realize that they weren't themselves when they said whatever they said or did whatever they did due to other stressors. And you'll decide to just let that go and not even discuss it, forgive them in your heart, and just move on with it. I've lost my spot again. I'm sorry, guys. My type got smaller than I thought it was. All this information comes largely from an article, this last piece, from Psychology Today by social worker Catherine Cullen. So you might have to suppress anger once in a while, right? But routine suppression of emotion can harm us, literally, by increasing our risk of dying earlier. And besides that, it really doesn't work. We're more apt to think about and feel things we try to avoid. Plus, suppressing our emotions deprives us of key information about our values, motivations, needs, and boundaries. Emotions are physiological states that mobilize us for particular behaviors and communicate important information about our internal and external environments to ourselves and others. Anger mobilizes us to attack and signals that a boundary, value, or rule has been violated. It can be a touchstone that alerts us that something is wrong. Suppression is the purposeful stuffing down or denial of emotions. This differs from modulating emotional expression, which entails recognizing an emotion, allowing it to inform your behavior, and integrating feedback from your environment and memory to adjust the emotion's volume so it doesn't undermine your goals. With suppression, you're trying to negate the emotion's existence, which it turns out isn't really possible, nor is it good for you. Suppressing emotions actually increases our stress levels. Researchers have monitored sympathetic nervous system activity, a proxy for stress levels, measured by skin conductance and pulse monitors, while having people watch films eliciting joy, sadness, and disgust. When instructed to watch the movie freely, participants show no observable sympathetic nervous system activation. That is, little to no stress. When instructed to suppress their emotions, however, sympathetic nervous system activation shoots up, indicating a spike in stress. This increase in stress helps explain why regular emotion suppressors tend to bring higher risks of heart disease and hypertension. Because a major function of emotions is to communicate our internal states with others, it's also no surprise that individuals who suppress their emotions feel less socially connected and less satisfied with their friends. They're also more likely to experience anxiety, depression, and other mental health issues. Expressing emotions in all their intensity also doesn't seem to be great for our physical, mental, and social health. Unbridled expression of anger can increase people's risk of heart attack, for example. Instead of suppressing or excessively expressing anger, we need to accept and respond to it. Accepting and responding entails noticing its presence, often its physical presence in our body, softening our resistance to it, tuning in to what it's trying to tell us, and using that information to inform but not dictate our behavior. The more we recognize, allow, and make space for our emotions, the greater tolerance we build for them. With greater tolerance, we're better able to modulate our emotions so they don't overwhelm our decision-making abilities or reason, or seem so unbearable that we have to suppress them. It may not always feel easy to respond rather than react to our emotions, but each time we try to do so, we get better at it. Going back to the beginning, is anger or rage productive or not? The answer is still yes. When used as fuel to engage in social activism to effect positive change, anger is a useful emotion to harness. When we let it consume us and lead us to hate others, it is certainly not useful and may be harmful to ourselves and others. Learning how to differentiate between productive, righteous rage and unproductive anger toward other people brings the opportunity to modulate this strong emotion and engage in compassionate anger for positive outcomes. And a final thought, as I bring this back to our UU spiritual base and the importance of going beyond thought to action, again from Dr. King. The ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at times of challenge and controversy. Thank you.